Hall of Stars was the most beautiful place in the galaxy. Its walls were made of crystals so clear you could see the stars shining outside. Great silver banners hung from the high ceiling, each one showing the symbols of the alien races that ruled the Galactic Council. Leaders from every corner of the galaxy sat in tall silver chairs, their eyes fixed on the small group standing in the center. That small group was human. They looked out of place among the long, elegant bodies of the other species. Their skin came in many shades, their clothes were simple, and their faces were calm but inside. Every human in that hall was burning with quiet anger. The council leader, a tall being with skin like glass, stood up. His voice was cold, without any warmth. "Humans," he said, "you are no longer welcome here." A low murmur ran through the hall. Some aliens smiled, others nodded in agreement. "You are too dangerous," the leader continued. "Too unpredictable, too primitive." The word primitive echoed in the air like an insult thrown into their faces. "You will leave all council worlds," he said. "You will not trade, you will not travel through our space, and you will not take part in our decisions." A human woman stepped forward. She was the ambassador. Wearing a dark suit, her hair tied back, her voice was steady, but carried a sharp edge. "You judge us for surviving," she said, "for defending ourselves when attacked, for growing stronger in a dangerous galaxy." The council leader raised a hand to silence her. "This is not a discussion," he said. "This is a decision." The sound of a heavy gavel striking the crystal table echoed like thunder. The decision was final. Humanity was exiled. They turned to leave. Laughter filled the hall. Some alien leaders whispered to each other. "Mocking the humans? They will not last a cycle," one said. "Their worlds will starve without our markets. They will fight among themselves," another added. "Destroy each other." But the humans kept walking. They did not argue. They did not look back. Only one man, a Starship captain named Elias Kane, allowed himself a small smile. It was not the smile of defeat. It was the smile of a man who had already decided what to do next. Outside, the human delegation walked through the shining corridors of the council station. Alien guards watched them closely, as if they were dangerous animals, through the glass walls. The humans could see hundreds of ships floating in the docking bays. Most were sleek alien vessels with smooth silver hulls. The human ship looked small next to them. It was old, with patches on its armor and mismatched parts from years of repairs. But it was theirs. It would carry them home as they stepped. Aboard, Captain Kane gathered his crew in the main deck. His voice was low, but every word was clear. "They think they've ended us," he said. "They think exile will break us." Looked at each of them in turn. "But we are human," he said. "We came from a world that tried to kill us every day. We fought storms, wild beasts, and each other, and we survived." The crew listened in silence, their faces hardening. "If the council doesn't want us in their galaxy," Kane said, "we'll take it ourselves." The words hit them like fire in their blood. Every human on that ship understood they would not fade away into history. They would not live as beggars at the edge of space. They would rise. They would fight. And they would build something so powerful the council would never laugh at them again. As the docking clamps released, the old ship drifted away from the council station. The stars stretched before them, endless and cold. The humans watched in silence as the shining station grew smaller behind them. For now, they were leaving in peace, but deep inside, they all knew this was only the beginning. One day they would return, and when they did, the galaxy would remember this day, not as the day humanity was cast out, but as the day humanity began to take everything. The engines roared to life. The human ship turned toward the dark, uncharted regions of the galaxy behind them. The council celebrated their decision. They had no idea they had just made the most dangerous mistake in their history. The human ship, dauntless, floated at the edge of the council station. Its hull was scratched, its paint was faded, and its engines carried the scars of too many battles. It was not the most beautiful vessel in the galaxy, but to its crew, it was home, inside. The air was heavy with quiet anger. No one shouted. No one argued, but every movement was sharp. They had just been thrown out of the galaxy's greatest alliance. They were now alone, and that truth weighed on them like a stone. Captain Elias Kane stood on the bridge, his hands rested on the rail as the stars spread out before him. The station behind them was shrinking with every passing moment. He could still hear the echo of alien laughter in his mind. It wasn't just an insult, it was a challenge. The council thought humans would beg to return. They thought exile would make humanity smaller. But Kane knew it would do the opposite. On the lower decks, engineers worked silently. Their tools sparked as they repaired worn cables and replaced broken panels. Every part of the Dauntless had been patched at least once. Some sections were older than the crew members themselves. But the humans knew their ship better than any alien craft. Every bolt, every dent, every scratch told a story, and they were not ready to let her die. In the cargo bay, crates were stacked high. Food supplies, spare parts, old weapons, and sealed. Boxes marked classified. These were the last resources humanity had been allowed to keep. Everything else was taken by the council before they left. The crew moved between the crates, checking each one. They knew there would be no resupply stations, no friendly ports, no helping hands. From now on, everything they had would have to be earned or taken. Kane walked into the bay, his voice carrying over the sound of tools and footsteps. "We have one chance," he said. "One chance to start over without the council's hand on our neck." The crew turned to him, their faces lit by the dim yellow lights. "They think we'll fade away," he said, "but I say we'll grow stronger than ever." He pointed toward the star map projected on the wall. It showed a great black region of space far from the council's borders. "This is the void," he said. "Uncharted, dangerous, forgotten." The map was full of warnings, dead worlds, shipwrecks, and strange energy signals.
No.
Sane council fleet ever went there, but Kane's eyes were fixed on it like a hunter watching prey out. "There," he continued, "no one will stop us. No one will tell us what we can or can't build." He let the words sink in. "We'll take what the galaxy throws away and turn it into something they fear." There were no cheers, no loud applause, just silent nods. The kind that meant everyone understood. This wasn't a dream of glory, it was survival. And for humans, survival often came with victory. The Dauntless engines roared to life. Metal shook under their feet as the ship turned toward the dark emptiness ahead. From the bridge, Kane watched the stars shift and slide as the ship aligned with its course. "Engage jump," he ordered. The helmsman's hands moved over the controls. A deep hum filled the ship as space began to warp around them. The station behind them was now only a speck of light, and then it was gone, swallowed by the black. Inside the jump tunnel, the view from the windows turned into streaks of blue and white. It was a long, silent stretch where thoughts became heavier. Some crew members thought about the families they left behind, others thought about revenge. Kane thought about the future. He knew this journey would change humanity forever. It might even kill them. But he also knew that humans had a way of thriving in places where others could not. Days later, the ship emerged into the void. The stars here looked colder, more distant. Dead suns floated like burnt-out lanterns in the dark, massive wrecks of alien ships drifted slowly. Some were so old that no one could remember their builders. The scanners lit up with strange readings, energy spikes, moving shadows, signals that cut in and out like whispers. The crew stared at the view screens. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also full of possibility. Kane stood at the center of the bridge. "This is where we begin," he said. "No more council orders, no more begging for scraps." He looked at the drifting wrecks outside. "We take what we can, we make it ours, and we make them regret ever casting us out." The engines slowed, and the Dauntless glided between the remains of ancient battles, somewhere in the shadows. New life for humanity was waiting, and somewhere in the far future, the council would pay the price for underestimating them. The void was not empty. It was filled with the ghosts of old wars. Colossal ships, broken in half, floated through the dark like silent tombs. Their hulls were torn open, their weapons silent, their crews long gone. The Dauntless drifted among them like a small shadow in a graveyard of giants. Captain Elias Kane stood at the front of the bridge. His eyes moved slowly over the wrecks displayed on the main screen. Some were alien ships the council still used, Others were so ancient that no one in the galaxy could name the species that built them. Every twisted beam, every cracked engine, every shattered cannon was a piece of treasure waiting to be claimed. "This place scares the rest of the galaxy," Kane said quietly. "But to us, it's a gift." The crew worked the scanners, mapping the wrecks, marking the ones with the most valuable parts. They weren't just looking for metal, they were hunting for technology, weapons, engines, shields, anything that could give humanity an edge. The first salvage run began with silence. 2 shuttles left the Dauntless and glided toward a massive alien battleship. Its hull was scorched black, its name written in a language no one recognized. Inside it was cold and dead, frost clung to the walls, and every sound echoed like a whisper in a tomb. The salvage team moved carefully, their boots clicking on the metal floor. They cut through bulkheads, removed panels, and pulled out strange, glowing cores that pulsed faintly in the dark. Each one was carried back to the shuttles like treasure. Days turned into weeks. The Dauntless became heavier with every load of salvage. They stripped engines from forgotten cruisers, took shield generators from ships that had once ruled the stars, collected alien weapons and studied how they worked. The engineers worked around the clock. They didn't just repair, they improved. Human hands found ways to make alien tech faster, stronger, and more reliable. What the galaxy had thrown away. Humanity was turning into something deadly, but the void was not without danger one day. While the crew was deep inside a wreck, the scanners picked up movement. A sleek black ship appeared from behind a drifting asteroid. It wasn't Council. It wasn't a pirate flag they recognized. Its weapons were armed, its engines hot. It moved toward the Dauntless like a predator smelling blood. Kane ordered the salvage team back immediately. The shuttles raced through the dark, carrying both people and stolen tech. The black ship kept closing the distance. "Shields up," Kane ordered, his voice calm but sharp. The Dauntless old shield generators hummed, forming a pale blue glow around the hull. For a moment, the 2 ships drifted in silence. Then, without warning, the black ship fired.
Ow.
Bolts of red energy slammed into the shields, making them flare and ripple. "Return fire," Kane commanded. The Dauntless guns were old, but they still had teeth. Bright streaks of plasma crossed the space between them, striking the black ship's hull. It dodged quickly. Moving with speed that surprised the crew, the fight was short but fierce finally. One well-aimed shot from the Dauntless hit the black ship's engine. Flames erupted, and the Predator turned and fled into the darkness. The crew breathed out. It was a reminder. The void was full of opportunity. But it was also full of predators. And some of those predators were now aware that humans were here. Over the next months, the Dauntless became a different ship. Its patched armor was replaced with alien alloys that could shrug off heavy fire. Its weapons doubled in number and power. Its engines now ran with a deep, confident hum inside. The crew moved with purpose. They were no longer just survivors. They were builders. They were preparing for something greater than just staying alive. In the mess hall, Kane addressed the crew. "You've seen what's out here," he said. "The galaxy thinks the void is a place where ships go to die." He paused, looking at each face. "But for us, it's where humanity is reborn." He pointed toward the star map. "We'll take what we've built here, and one day, we'll bring it to the Council's doorstep." The void stretched endlessly around them, but to the humans on the Dauntless, it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the edge of a kingdom they were about to claim. The void had been quiet. For weeks, the Dauntless drifted through fields of broken ships, its crew working non-stop. Engines had been tuned to perfection. Weapons polished and upgraded, shields tested again and again. Every system now hummed with strength. They had built something far more dangerous than the old patched ship that had left the Council's space. But Kane knew it was not enough to hide and build. At some point, they would have to show the galaxy what humanity had become. He did not want a small skirmish or a desperate defense. He wanted a message, one so clear and so loud that every Council world would hear it. That message would be their first strike. The opportunity came in the form of a distress signal. It was faint, crackling through static. The translation software struggled with the language. but the words were clear enough. Help. Slavers. Taking us. The signal's coordinates placed it near the outer edges of Council space. It's a kind of place where pirate lords and slaver fleets hunted without fear. Kane looked at the screen and saw his chance. Set course, he ordered. The crew moved without hesitation. The jump engines roared, and the Dauntless vanished into the dark hours later. They emerged into a star system lit by a pale red sun. On the scanner, they saw them, a convoy of slave ships, escorted by a half-dozen armed escorts. The convoy was slow, its engines pulling the heavy load of prisoners, perfect prey. Kane stood at the center of the bridge. Battle stations, he said. The alarms sounded through the ship, and the crew took their positions. Gunners ran to their turrets. Engineers braced the reactors for full power. The Dauntless moved like a predator through the black, silent and unseen. They closed the distance until the slaver ships filled the view screens. Kane gave the order, fire. The first volley of plasma tore through the void. One of the escorts exploded instantly, scattering debris in all directions. The slavers panicked, scrambling to form a defensive line, but the Dauntless was faster. It darted between them, shields flaring as enemy fire bounced off the alien alloys they had salvaged. Gunners targeted engines first, one by one.
Slaver ships went dark, drifting.
Powerless, the crew cheered quietly as they disabled the last escort. Then Kane gave the next order. Board them. Small assault shuttles detached from the Dauntless and sped toward the slave ships. Inside, human soldiers moved with precision. They kicked down doors, overpowered guards, and freed hundreds of prisoners. Many of them were alien species who had never even seen a human before. They expected to be sold or abandoned. Instead, they were offered food, blankets, and safety. When the freed captives were brought aboard the Dauntless, the ship's mess hall was overflowing. Children huddled together, adults whispered in disbelief. Kane stood before them, his voice steady but strong. The Council cast us out, he said. They told the galaxy we were dangerous. He looked over the faces. Staring back at him, they were right. But we are dangerous only to those who enslave. Those who oppress, those who think they own the stars. The rescued aliens listened in silence. Some were crying quietly, others clenched their fists, ready to fight. For the first time, many saw humans not as exiles, but as liberators. Kane ordered the slaver ships stripped of weapons, fuel, and supplies. Then, in full view of the freed captives, he had the ships destroyed. The explosions lit up the red sky like fireworks. It was more than just destruction. It was a warning to anyone who might think of following in those slavers' footsteps. By the time the Dauntless left the system, rumors had already begun to spread. Whispers in spaceports spoke of a human warship that came from the void, a ship that struck like lightning, freed the helpless, and vanished again. Council officials dismissed the stories as fantasy, but in the shadows, fear began to grow. In the quiet of the bridge, Kane studied the star map. One strike was not enough. They would have to keep hitting, keep growing, keep showing the galaxy that humanity had returned. But deep down, Kane knew this first strike had already changed something. Not just in the galaxy, but in his crew. They no longer felt like exiles. They felt like the first soldiers of something greater. The void had been their shelter. Now it was becoming their fortress, and soon it would be the launching ground for a war the Council never expected. The first strike had been a success. The Dauntless had not only destroyed the slaver fleet, but also freed hundreds of captives. Word of the battle spread faster than Kane expected. In the ports and hidden colonies of the Outer Rim, whispers grew. A human warship was out there, a ship that fought the powerful and protected the weak. For some, the story was only a rumor, but for others, it was a spark of hope. The outer worlds were the forgotten edge of the galaxy, planets too far for the Council to care about. Some were lawless markets ruled by gangs. Others were mining worlds where workers were little more than slaves. The Council only sent patrols when resources needed to be collected, and even then, they cared nothing for the people who lived there. Kane saw opportunity. These were places where loyalty could be bought with freedom instead of fear. If humanity wanted to build an empire, it would start here. The first world they visited was a desert moon called Virella. The air was hot and dry. The settlements were built from metal scraps and old ship hulls. A gang known as the Rust Vultures controlled the people. They demanded protection payments in exchange for not burning homes. When the Dauntless landed outside the largest settlement, the gang laughed. They thought the humans were traitors to be robbed. They stopped laughing when the Dauntless guns aimed at their base. The fight was short. The gang's vehicles were no match for plasma cannons. When the dust settled, Kane walked into the settlement center and faced the people. "You don't owe us anything," he told them, "but if you want to stand free, then stand with us, the people." Tired of years of abuse, agreed Virella. Became the first outer world to join humanity's growing influence. From there, the Dauntless moved quickly. On the frozen planet of Harkos, they destroyed a smuggling ring that fed the black markets. On the water world of Lorene, they freed fishing colonies from a pirate lord who demanded tribute. Each time, Kane followed the same pattern: strike hard, remove the oppressors, and then offer protection in exchange for loyalty. He did not pretend it was charity. These worlds would become part of humanity's growing network. They would provide food, resources, and most importantly, manpower. It wasn't long before the first volunteers came aboard the Dauntless. Some were miners, others farmers. A few were old soldiers who had fought in forgotten wars. They wore different uniforms, spoke different languages. But they all swore the same oath, to fight beside the humans who had freed their homes. The Dauntless was no longer alone. A small fleet began to form. Old freighters were refitted with salvaged weapons. Captured pirate ships were stripped, repaired, and crewed with the newly trained volunteers. Each ship flew a new flag, black with the human emblem in the center. It was a symbol the Council would soon come to fear, but the more worlds they took, the more attention they attracted. A Council patrol finally crossed their path near the asteroid belts of Tyran 6. The alien commander ordered Kane to surrender and face trial for acts of aggression against the galaxy. Kane simply replied, "We don't answer to you anymore." The battle that followed was swift. The Dauntless and its new allies tore through the patrol. The few surviving Council ships fled, carrying the warning back to the core worlds. That warning worked in humanity's favor. More outer worlds, hearing of the human fleet's victories, sent messages asking for help. Some begged for liberation. Others offered alliance before their oppressors could strike first. Kane accepted them all. Every world added to the network meant more ships, more fighters, and more influence. On the bridge one night, Kane stood with his second-in-command. She looked over the star map. Red markers spreading like fire across the edges of Council space. "They can't ignore us forever," she said. Kane nodded slowly. "That's the point," he replied. "By the time they do, it'll be too late." The outer worlds were no longer forgotten under human leadership. They were becoming something greater, a shield for the weak, a sword against the powerful, and one day they would be the spear that pierced the heart of the Galactic Council. The Hall of Stars had not been this crowded in decades. Every seat in the Galactic Council chamber was filled. Alien leaders from hundreds of worlds had answered the urgent summons. The air shimmered with tension. Holographic maps floated above. The crystal table on those maps. Red markers were spreading like a fast-moving infection along the edges of Council space. "This is the situation," said High Chancellor Voris, his voice trembling despite his effort to sound calm. "These humans are taking control of the outer worlds at an alarming rate." He tapped a control, and the map zoomed in, one by one. Systems along the rim lit up in red. They are building fleets, forming alliances, and arming themselves with weapons. From unknown sources, a tall, insect-like delegate clicked his mandibles in frustration. "They were supposed to vanish," he said, "without trade, without allies. They should have collapsed by now." "They didn't collapse," replied a scaled, serpent-like counselor. "They grew stronger. Some tried to dismiss the reports. They have a few ships." One leader scoffed, "This is not a threat to the Council," but others knew better. Images appeared, wreckage of Council patrol ships, settlements freed from pirate rule, and flags bearing the human emblem flying over spaceports. The evidence was undeniable. The humans were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were building something powerful. In one corner of the chamber, an old historian spoke. "You have forgotten what they are," he said, his voice rough with age. "They come from a world that tried to kill them every day. Storms, predators, diseases, they survived all of it." He looked around the chamber, his alien eyes cold, and when they are threatened, they do not retreat. They advance. Voras called for silence. "We must decide now. Do we crush them before they grow further, or do we negotiate?" The chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate military action. Others warned that sending fleets could unite more worlds under the human banner. The fear was not just of human ships, it was of the idea that humanity represented freedom from the Council's control. Reports kept coming in. More outer worlds were joining the humans willingly. Council spies sent word of human war factories hidden deep in the void. Even more alarming, the main human fleet had not yet been seen. Only a handful of ships, led by the Dauntless, had been involved in the battles so far. If these victories were only the work of a small force, what would happen when the full strength of humanity arrived? On the other side of the galaxy, Kane knew the Council was watching. In the war room aboard the Dauntless, his officers studied intercepted transmissions. "The Council is panicking," said his second-in-command, pointing at a translated message. "They don't know how big we are, and they're afraid to find out." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "Good," he said. "Fear will slow them down. And every day they hesitate is another day we grow stronger." While the Council debated, humanity acted. New shipyards were being built in asteroid belts. Weapons factories worked day and night. Every captured vessel was repaired and added to. The growing fleet, the outer worlds sent soldiers, engineers, and raw materials. What had started as a single exile ship was becoming a navy that could challenge the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Back in the Council chamber, tempers boiled over. One leader slammed a clawed hand on the table. "If we wait any longer, they will be at our gates," he said. Another shook his head. "If we attack, we may drive the neutral worlds into their arms." The argument had no end, but underneath the noise, one truth was becoming clear to every leader present. The humans were no longer an exile problem. They were a rising power, and if left unchecked, they could become unstoppable. In private corridors after the meeting, secret alliances began to form. Some leaders whispered about supporting humanity in secret. Others plotted to destroy them. With covert strikes, the galaxy was shifting. And no one could predict where it would end. For Kane and his crew, that uncertainty was the perfect weapon. While the Council argued, humanity was already preparing for their next move. The first phase, survival, was over. The second phase, expansion, was in full motion. And soon, the final phase would begin. The day humanity marched straight into the heart of the Galactic Council, not as outcasts, but as rulers. The sky above the Galactic Council capital had always been calm. Trade ships drifted in lazy lines, luxury cruisers shimmered in the sunlight, and patrol fleets moved in neat formation for centuries. The capital had been a place where no enemy dared to appear. That changed in a single heartbeat. It began with shadows. Massive shapes blocked the light of the twin suns. The air traffic control towers sent urgent calls. No one answered. Then the scanners lit up with hundreds of contacts. The human fleet had arrived, but these were not the battered, patched ships the Council remembered. These were giants of steel and fire, some built from alien wrecks, others forged in human shipyards hidden deep in the void. Every vessel bristled with weapons, plasma cannons, railguns, missile batteries, all upgraded with stolen and improved technology. Their armor was black and silver. Gleaming like the edge of a blade at the front of the formation was the Dauntless. No longer a relic, but a predator reborn. Inside the Council chamber, panic erupted. Alarms blared through the capital's streets. Patrol fleets scrambled to intercept, but they were too few, too slow. The human ships moved with precision, cutting through the first line of defense like a knife through cloth. Explosions lit the skies for every Council ship destroyed. Two more human ships took its place, on the bridge of the Dauntless. Captain Elias Kane stood at the command platform. His crew worked in perfect rhythm. They had trained for this moment for years. Every battle in the outer worlds, every salvage, operation, every alliance, it had all led to this. This is it, Kane said quietly. No turning back. He opened a galaxy-wide channel across every com screen, every holoprojector, every personal device. Kane's face appeared. You cast us out, he said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of iron. You called us dangerous, primitive, unworthy. He paused, letting the silence stretch. You were right about one thing. We are dangerous. But not to the innocent, only to those who think they can own the galaxy. His words echoed across worlds, in the outer worlds. Crowds cheered, in the councils. Core worlds, fear took root on the capital. The council leaders watched. Powerless to stop the message, Kane continued. You didn't invite us into your galaxy, so we took it, at that signal. The human fleet advanced, missiles streaked. Toward the orbital defense platforms, plasma fire ripped through the capital's shield grid. The city below shook as the defense towers collapsed one by one. The Council's own fleet tried a desperate counterattack. Dozens of cruisers swarmed the Dauntless, but human tactics were unlike anything the Council had faced. They fought not with rigid formations, but with speed, deception, and precision. Small, agile ships darted through the enemy lines, targeting engines and weapons instead of holes. Within minutes, the attack collapsed. The capital's defenders were scattered, fleeing or destroyed. Kane gave the order to hold fire on the main city. He did not come to burn it, not yet. Instead, he ordered dropships to descend, human soldiers. Along with fighters from the liberated outer worlds, landed in the capital streets. They moved quickly, surrounding the Hall of Stars, the same place where, years ago, the Council had exiled humanity inside. The alien leaders sat in shock. The great crystal doors burst open. Kane walked in, his boots echoing on the polished floor. Behind him came soldiers bearing the black and silver human flag. He looked at the same council leader who had once called humanity too primitive. The alien's skin, once clear as glass, now seemed pale and cloudy. Kane spoke without raising his voice. You thought you could decide our place in this galaxy, he said. Now we decide yours. He walked to the center of the chamber. This is not a negotiation, he said. This is the end of the council as you know it. Some leaders shouted in protest, others remained silent. Kane raised his hand, and the human flag was hung beside the council's banners. It was not just a symbol, it was a declaration. Outside, the human fleet maintained position. Every ship in the sky was a reminder that the balance of power had shifted forever. The galaxy would no longer be ruled by those who thought strength meant control. It would be ruled by those who knew strength came from survival, unity, and the will to fight back. As Kane left the chamber, the streets of the capital echoed with a new chant, not in one language, but in many. It carried a single meaning. The humans had arrived, and they were here to stay.